Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey RJ, how you doing? You survived the last 2 days okay?
Yes, good. Tired, but it's been a crazy ride. But happy to do all that.
Awesome. You've survived your first you know, exit interview, season-ending interview, media availability days. It's a big deal. While you're doing the reporter thing, I guess you kind of get to take that hat off now.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, for the time being, for sure. Although it felt in some ways like I've done this before, in that I've gone to school before, and it was kind of like that last day today where everyone's signing each other's yearbooks, saying goodbye, have a great summer, all that stuff. So that part of it felt familiar, but yeah, it's been a lot of reporting, that's for sure.
Yeah, so now you get to relax, watch some playoff hockey, get back into the swing of things here. We'll just dissect what we're seeing and all that fun stuff. Feel really good about my St. Louis pick. That's for sure.
It's looking good early on, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so just so everybody knows, and welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. We're going to kind of do these like season reviews in two parts. So this episode, we're going to, hear from RJ about all the exit interviews and all the media availability that he's done the last 2 days, as the Kraken have finished, everything up and the players are leaving and all that kind of stuff. We'll go over all the news and what people had to say, off-season plans, all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to take a look at what the season was for the Kraken, what worked, what didn't work, what do we want to see them address as we go through the off-season and stuff. Very much a macro view of the organization. And then in part two, which we'll release on Monday of next week, kind of the normal deep dive time slot, that's when we're going to break it down and kind of go, from the individual perspective, or we'll go ahead and give like final season grades for all of the players and really break them down and talk about who we liked, what aspects of the game we thought were good, what we'd like to see them work on and maybe improve over the course of the off season, that kind of stuff. So we're taking this end of the season stuff very seriously, which meant instead of just dumping some like 3 hour long podcast on everybody, we thought probably better to split it up into two parts, make it a little more digestible, make it a little easier on us too, and we'll handle it that way. All right, so that's what we're doing there. RJ, gonna pass it over to you. Really, first off, I guess you kind of already talked about it. It had that last day of school vibe. But yeah, what was the general feeling around the building from, I guess, the players and the coaching staff and stuff? Because, season's over. It wasn't necessarily the season they wanted, but there were some positives there towards the end.
Yeah, there definitely were. And I think you kind of got that sense, talking from everyone. I think people kind of wanted to look on the bright side of things. Definitely, different than I would imagine the feel has been for, some other teams that didn't make the playoffs, where, it's kind of more entrenched, what you're supposed to do. And I think there's kind of that leeway being the first season and everyone just, gearing up for summer. And I think across the board, you saw this eagerness to have that full off season with everyone together and kind of have more of a normal start to next season. I think people were really excited about that, and it provided a big reason for optimism.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to be huge for them. We've talked about it several times over the course of this year, and certainly, go back to our like post-game lives from the beginning of the year and stuff, right? We were just talking like, look, if they had a normal off-season schedule and they had, time to already know each other and not have to introduce themselves and go through a training camp and go through preseason where it's normal and your building is finished. Like, remember, these were things that happened last year. It seems like a long time ago. We're kind of so far past it, but like Climate Pledge was not ready for them when this team was assembled. They could not go and see it. They could not practice on the ice there. You know what I mean? Like, that was not an option for them. That's why, in part, they were doing, playing the preseason games at all the different WHL arenas and stuff. So there was a lot in flux beyond just the fact that the team had to come together, had to start existing last offseason, that I think we've lost sight of over the course of everything. And yeah, I could see the players wanting that return to normalcy, and it'll also be interesting to see what the league and what the Kraken want to do as far as COVID protocols and everything through that, because that was also a big story through training camp and then the first part of the season as well, dealing with all of that. Like I think it'll be really nice for the team to just kind of be able to put all that in the past. I think that'll be a big deal for them. As far as personalities go, RJ, it seemed like the players really opened up here at the end. Like the stress of the season and everything, it seemed like it was kind of gone this go around.
Yes, it did. And you definitely saw that in these player media availabilities. I think a lot of weight has kind of been lifted off their shoulders and everything with the season being over. And also just kind of knowing, look, yeah, we didn't do as well as we would have liked, but that's okay, because we got a lot of optimism heading into next season. And you could tell that also just in the way that they always talked about the fans too. And we'll get into that in more detail later. But just knowing that everyone was going to be by their side and sticking with them through good and bad, that, a lot of times when you see exit interviews from teams that finished as low in the standings as the Kraken did, there's just this, this kind of weight on all the players, this, frustration, just this, kind of sadness they feel like they have to kind of feel and express, this air of failure around them,
Yeah.
right? And you didn't get that this time, which I think is good, and that's how it should be. It's the organization's first season and whatnot, but you really did have the players kind of open up, especially about the things they liked about Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the season is so busy, you kind of have to talk about the games and what's right in front of you and keep your eyes on the prize and all that. But they got the chance to, talk a little bit more about just how their life has been and, what they've enjoyed about living here.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool, and I wouldn't, tell anybody if you haven't already, go check out on our Twitter page. It's at Emerald City HKY. RJ did a great job of posting certainly all the pictures and some fun interview quotes and stuff from that. It really gives you an idea of what everybody was talking about and the different things that everybody focused on. I thought that was really awesome. Did it, any particular moments stand out? Like, do you have like a top 2 or 3, funny or Seattle based moments you just want to mention real quick?
Yeah, let's see. We'll start with, I guess, Matty Beniers talking about how Seattle kind of reminds him of Massachusetts, which it was funny. Definitely got some chuckles from us because he was so excited that he gets to eat seafood again. He's like, I can finally have some good clam chowder. Like, it's great. I get to eat it again. I definitely didn't want to do that in Michigan. I imagine the clam chowder is probably not as good there. But we heard some comparisons from Ryan Donato also earlier in the season about how Seattle kind of reminds them a little bit of Boston in that area. But good that they can kind of feel a little bit more at home here.
Yeah, that was the one that jumped off, Twitter at me was the Matty Beniers one. So I'm glad you brought that one up. I think that was really, really good. But yes, the other thing that it seemed like everybody kept coming back around to was the fans. Just expressing how grateful they were for this fan base, how loud this fan base was at Climate Pledge Arena. Just, it seemed like every single one of them, to a man, had something to say about the fan base that it didn't, obviously all athletes are going to say like good things about the fans, but it didn't come across as though this was just like a mandate handed down from the organization, like, hey, don't forget to mention the fans. They all felt very genuine and sincere, especially because they all brought them up in kind of personal ways. And I thought that was really nice. They really talked about, if not a personal moment, but just how it kind of impacted them, as individuals, dealing with this fan base and interacting with them and the energy that they could get from them. And I think that's huge considering, the last time they played at Climate Pledge Arena, that fan base was so there for it and the fan appreciation night and everything. And you could just tell that the team was feeding off that energy in that game so well. And even during that 3-game win streak that I was up there for, like, it was really, you could see that synergy coming together between fans and team. So I liked hearing that a lot.
I think that's absolutely the right read on it. And one thing that impressed me was how often that stuff came up unprompted. It wasn't like, what do you think about the fans and how great they are? It was players, even when not directly asked about that, bringing up the fans and how great they've been. And today, I think it was Jordan Eberle that said, that the fan base, they're so great at cheering for you, not just when things are going well, but when they're not. He said, I've played in front of some fan bases that, they love you, but then once you lose, things really turn. And they never did that here. And that was a common theme as well, too. Jamie Alexiak yesterday was talking about, and I think he was just asked about kind of what, a highlight from the season or some memory or something like that. Had nothing to do with the fans, the question. And he brought up that first Colorado game. Now, if you remember, they were down 7-0 in that game. Ended up being a 7-3 final. But he brought that up as kind of a highlight because he was talking about how they were still cheering in the third period, down 7-0. After a big save or once they finally got a goal in that game. It was as loud as that building had been the entire game. And that is a game that really stuck with the players. You can tell we've had multiple players bring that up, even months since and unprompted. Like that game, I think really stuck in the players' minds, that the fans are here for us no matter what. And it just means so much to them. You can really tell.
Yeah, it does. And I really do think that there is something special about this Seattle Kraken fan base. We've talked about it, as far as the kind of community we've had grow here on YouTube or, listening to our podcast, people we've interacted with on Twitter, the other Twitter communities that have sprung up, and then obviously just the way everybody interacts with with the Kraken itself, right? The organization and everything. It's been really, really cool to see all those aspects and stuff. But yes, in the building, it has been something special night in, night out. And look, let's be real. There was questions I think everybody kind of had at different points leading up to the season, right? When we were first, okay, it's an Amazon's getting like the name, you know what I mean? The naming rights kind of thing. We had everybody, questions about that. You had questions when ticket prices were first released. Like, oh, is this just going to be like a corporate thing based on
Right.
who's going to be able to afford to go to games and who maybe they're going to cater to as far as wanting to bring in to go to games. They got, the Space Needle Lounge. They've got all this kind of stuff. Like what exactly is this going to look like? But at the end of the day, the Seattle sports fan community came through and made this an incredible experience, an incredible game day experience. You had all the stuff going on at the armories before the game, right? Like that was super cool. I just think that, yeah, Seattle is such a great sports market that it bled through no matter what. And it is really awesome that the players felt that in a year where, as I said before, because of COVID, they couldn't exactly interact with the fans all that much. It had to come from a distance.
Yep. And that's something else that, the players mentioned, just the difficulty of not being able to do as much as they would have liked, get out in the community and team build with each other. They had a lot of team building activities that were planned that had to be canceled because of COVID.
Yeah, so I think it's a big deal. It should not be something that's overlooked. I know a lot of places tend to overlook the fans in those regards, but the bottom line is I think it really mattered for this team and getting them through the season, because I know how difficult it must have been on all the players between how it started and then certainly how the season went itself. I just can't even imagine. So give yourselves a pat on the back, all you Kraken fans.
Yes,
you have
well
earned
deserved.
it. Yes. All right. So anything else kind of stick out as far as the player interviews went? Systems wise, anybody talking about like on ice things? Maybe how they felt like they performed this year, maybe got better as the year went on. Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk, I guess, generally, systems wise and everything. I think there was kind of a general agreement that they had found bits of the ways that they want to play. There was a lot of talk about identity, especially from Yanni Gord. I mean, he mentioned it more than anyone else about having a team identity and the importance of, kind of playing that way. I'm trying to bring this up, here, fast, hard, and relentless. That's kind of how he described what the identity is. And I think there are certainly some moments from the season where we saw what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those involved Yanni Gord.
Yes.
He's certainly that kind of guy. And he was saying that we've kind of discovered that we just need to put it together for 60 minutes a night and, for 82 games. So I think that was something that a lot of the players kind of agreed with is consistency definitely needs to be there more often. As far as players who have improved, or one thing that stood out to me, we were talking to Jared McCann today, and he was asked, yes, you get the points, you get the goals and everything. It's easy to celebrate your season, but who's someone who maybe doesn't get, as much recognition from on the point side of things, but who still stood out to you as, performing well. And he singled out Jonas Donskoi.
Mm.
He said that he was impressive, even though, everyone looks at the points, everyone's going to see the goals, but he kind of took on more of a defensive role this year and, stood out to him as being a 200-foot player and especially his work on the penalty kill.
Yeah. And I think that that's something, we and many other Kraken fans identified, certainly lately, this last, 2 weeks, really, once he worked himself back into the lineup, you could tell the difference that was made when he was out there on that fourth line. But even earlier in the year, you could tell as he was kind of falling down the lines, as the goals weren't there for him, as the points weren't there for him. Didn't he start on the first unit power play? He was the bumper guy, I think, on the first unit.
Yes, he was the bumper guy on the first unit.
Yeah. And that was really supposed to be his thing. And so, he was supposed to kind of be that depth scoring option, that kind of guy who could pitch in and score goals on a team that we knew was going to struggle with that based on who they had in the lineup. And it just didn't work out for him. But yeah, credit for him as he kept falling down the depth chart. He kept adjusting his game to be what it needed to be so that he could contribute to the team and play the best hockey that he could at the time. And I do think that that's really cool of Jared McCann to kind of single him out and talk about that, because that is something that, it is easy for people to point to it and just be like, okay, you scored 2 goals, right? I think he finished with 2.
Yeah.
That's a huge letdown when we were talking about you flirting with 20 before the season started. And you ended up on the fourth line. You were a healthy scratch at times. I think it is worth noting that, he was a professional. He handled it well, and he made sure that he, didn't hear about any tantrums he was throwing in the locker room. He wasn't demanding a trade. He wasn't doing any of that kind of diva type stuff. He was just, no, I'm going to adjust how I'm playing based on where I can help this team right now, because it's certainly not with goal scoring. I just can't figure that out. And he got it done. And I think that it says a lot about him. I think it says a lot about the Kraken as a whole, that he felt comfortable doing that and wanted to do that. I think that's important too, because there are some teams where guys would hit that level and just be like, you know what? No, I'm not. I just don't feel it with these guys. I don't feel like I'm going to be rewarded, or anybody's going to see it, or anybody's going to appreciate it. Really, right? Like I guarantee you that has happened before, and that was not the case here. He
No,
knew
it wasn't.
that they would appreciate it.
And I think there's also an element of leadership there from Jared McCann to kind of point out Jonas Donskoi. I think he kind of knows what he's doing there. That I'm sure Donskoi's gotten a lot of flack from a lot of people. Given the play and everything. I'm sure Jared sees that and wants to highlight the better aspects of his game. And while we're on Donskoi, interesting comments. I mean, I think it was Ron Francis who was talking about, they had just finished his kind of end of season interview with him, and Francis talked a little bit about him, saying that Jonas kind of put a lot of blame on himself for the lack of performance. Said that he changed up some things as far as I guess like training regimen, things like that in the off season, and it didn't work out as well as he would have liked. But that kind of the message from him, from Hackstall, was just that you got to shoot a little bit more. You're not going to score if you don't shoot, and you got to go to the net. You said you look at a lot of those goals that he scored in Colorado when he had 17 the season before. A lot of those came from going to the net, going to those areas where goals come from. And I think after a while, Jonas kind of stopped doing that as much. So I think they're probably looking to get him back toward that type of game that he played in Colorado.
So what you're telling me is Hackstall is capable of telling guys to go to the net.
Yes, clear. Although that was, I think Ron Francis is the one who said all that. So, but I assume Hackstall was nodding. So I assume he agrees.
There we go. Because oh boy, are we gonna get into that stuff later?
Sure are.
All right. Anything else from the player interviews that we want to talk about and kind of discuss here. I mean, obviously, Jayden Schwartz was one of the more interesting situations. If you want to touch on that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jayden Schwartz, it was tough. He definitely didn't seem, kind of too optimistic about things when we saw him today. I mean, the first question right off the bat was, how's your health doing? Where's your health at? And he just said, obviously not that great. And he did clarify that it seemed like the hand is all better, but he clarified there's something else that's unrelated to his hand that they are still getting tests done and they're trying to figure it out. So wouldn't say obviously what that was, just something not related to the hand. Reading between the lines, maybe that says head injury. That would kind of fit that criteria, but it could be a number of different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's on the plus side. Ron Francis did say that he expects both Jayden and Brandon Tanev back for the start of training camp. So
Okay.
hopefully it's not too serious.
Yeah, no, that is important and good to hear for on both fronts. Yeah, I mean, my first reaction was, "Is this hockey?" And it's like, nope, it's not related to my hand. It's my wrist. Like that was it.
That would be great. You got us.
Forearm, carpal tunnel. Like, but yeah, no, it is interesting to hear because obviously I remember as people were asking about like, hey, when do you think we'll see Schwartz? Because the timetable was, up, and then he touched ice, and he got in for a game or two, and then it was just gone again, and it was a very mysterious thing, and we were all worried about him, and I know how upsetting it can be when you're still running tests after all this time to still kind of be trying to figure out what it is and what the best course of treatment might be for whatever it is. I know how difficult that is to go through for anybody, much less a professional athlete where everything is tied to your body that way. Like, I can't even imagine that. So it's good to hear from him in that sense, and get an idea. And it's good what Ron Francis had to say about him being ready for training camp next year, hopefully. But it's also difficult, and wish him well for sure. Anything else? Anybody else you want to talk about?
Yeah, there's a few more if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk Vince Dunn. I mean, he was the first one that we got kind of on the first day. And he mentioned, kind of quickly in an answer that, he's learned a lot from Adam Larson, being paired. The two of those two guys have been paired together for far and away the most minutes of any D pair the Kraken have. I think it's like, 500 something. No one else has like 300, but I kind of followed up and asked him, what Adam Larson has taught him and, what he's learned there. And he said just a lot of the defensive side of the game. It's kind of what we suspected was going on there. We saw some Adam Larson-like moments from Vince Dunn as the two had been paired together, longer in the season. And he said, he's taught me a lot of defensive things, kind of where to be, how to angle up on the man, things like that. And that also being paired with him allows me to be a little bit more freewheeling offensively, just knowing that he's got it totally covered if, I need to be aggressive. And you could tell that Dunn really appreciated Larson's presence there. And then we kind of talked to Larson too about, being a leader in that way. And, he said, it's something I really try and do is help out these players that I'm with and teach and do that kind of thing. That he definitely takes pride in it. And one more thing on Larson too. Hackstall was asked today, is there anyone from the leadership group that kind of really stepped up over the second half of the season and led that way after Giordano, moved on to Toronto, and he singled out Adam Larson as a guy who really stepped up and mentored people. So I know you're a big fan of Adam Larson and, just doing more from the leadership perspective. So I wanted to make sure to bring that one up.
Yeah, no, that's really nice to hear. I'm definitely glad to hear it. It's always nice when, you kind of got that perception, and it's nice to hear stuff back it up. And that's, the A on his chest is there for a reason. And sounds like doing a good job of representing the defensive core, post Geo trade. So really happy to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other one that I want to bring up was Ryan Donato, because we're, as an RFA, I think
Mm-hmm.
we're all kind of hoping that the Kraken find a way to get a deal done with him. And they haven't. The two camps haven't really talked. He said he hasn't talked with Ron about a new contract, which isn't surprising given that it's so soon after the
Yeah.
season ends. But he said, if I'm lucky enough to be back, it would be great. And just you could tell the whole time that he loves being here.
Mm-hmm.
He had this whole answer about, he goes to Pike Place Market, every week to go get his produce. He goes to all the parks with his dog. Like, you could tell he just loves being in this area, loves Seattle, and the way he's talking about it, like he's like, gosh, there's so much that I like. Talked about all the restaurants and everything. I think he really wants to stay, and hopefully, Ron Francis agrees.
I was gonna say, as Striatic would say, with us
Mm-hmm.
now, make Seattle Ryan Donato's forever home.
Yep.
Throw that one in there. Yeah, no, yeah, I get it. You're not. I would have assumed that he didn't immediately after that Winnipeg game, on the flight back to Seattle, walk up or down the plane depending on where everybody sits to Ron Francis, just be like, "Where's my money?"
Yeah, probably not the move to make there.
Probably not. Probably not after that game specifically, too. It might not be a
Yeah.
good one. Maybe after a win, you get if like after that Sharks game, that might have been a good time, right? Just walk up to Ron Francis's office the next morning. Hey, where's my contract? Yeah, no, I still think it's for sure something that's gonna get done there. Like, there's just I can't imagine any scenario in which Ryan Donato is not a member of the Seattle Kraken next year.
Yeah, no, it's got to happen. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. But just again, good to see how much he loves being here.
Yeah, no, and that was something that many players talked about, and it's good to hear. You want that. It
Hmm.
does help when they like the community that they're playing in. I think that matters a lot. I think it matters a lot for their effort level on tough nights and all that kind of stuff, right? Like we were saying earlier, that relationship between them and the fans, that synergy there. I think that is part of
Oh
it.
yeah,
They have to want to be there and want to support those people as much in that community that they are a part of. They have to see themselves as a part of that community because there are times where athletes don't, and I
yep.
do think that their performance is at times worse because of that. So
Hmm.
glad to hear it for sure.
All right,
That's,
one more player related thing before we move on.
mm-hmm.
Guys going to the World Championships.
Yep.
That's something we see with teams that don't make the playoffs. A lot of guys will often go to represent their country at the World Championships. This year, it is in Helsinki, Finland, and the Kraken have three, possibly four players going to play in the Worlds. We know for sure that Grubauer, Larson, and Drieger are going. Grubauer for Germany, Adam Larson for Sweden, and then you know, excuse me, Chris Drieger for Canada. So good to see that. And then possibly Carson Coolman. So I don't know. I asked Ron Francis about this because Grubauer told us he was going to Worlds, so we knew that
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Larson was on the ice with him this morning, so we could kind of put the dots together.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him if there was anyone else, and he said possibly Coolman. So that'd be kind of cool
Interesting.
for Carson Coolman to be able to go.
Yeah, another RFA that I would love to see stick with the team next year.
Mm-hmm.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's,
possibly Team USA for him. Also, notably, Matty Beniers will not be going
mm-hmm.
uh, to the Worlds. I think he's had enough, things this season, man.
I was
Um,
just gonna ask about him because he's been through a lot this season, lots of stuff. Was there any talk from him or Francis or Hackstall just kind of about what his situation might look like next year?
Not exactly. I mean, there's the normal praise that they've kind of
Mm-hmm.
given him since, really day one. I mean, just great things to say about him. As far as, position next year, it was kind of more vague stuff like, we'll want him to grow. We want him to take that next step and, be real contributor for us and all that kind of thing. And that was kind of what was echoed from Maddie as well, just talking about wanting to get to the next level of his game and, more taking things in regularly. And he mentioned that he had learned a lot too in
Yeah.
just this short amount of time here. Mostly with the schedule stuff too. He's like, in college, you play a game and you've got like kind of a week to think about it and make adjustments or whatever, but here, you're playing again 2 days later. It's a very different feel, but he's certainly handle it with flying colors.
What was I saying, everybody? Said it all year in relation to Matty Beniers. You want to get him in so that he can learn all that stuff, just the behind the scenes, the scheduling, how you got to deal with your body hurting and then going to practice that next morning after a game. You got to figure that stuff out, and it didn't matter what he did in these 10 games that he played with the Kraken. If that was all he took away to go into next season, having that under his belt and not having to be a concern for him, it was going to be worth it. Just so happens he was able to put up, nine points and be fantastic on the ice in addition to learning those lessons. So that is absolutely music to my ears. No talk about, like, the next level is just more than 1 point a game, right? Like, to be able to do that.
Clearly. Yes. Yeah. Multi-point games, probably part of that, but nothing specific about, kind of where his role is in the lineup. I think, most players would probably tell you that's not their call to make.
Yeah.
As far as what their role is. And I think, most coaches and GMs would be pretty close to the vest on that.
I was going to say, they don't really talk about that stuff at the end of the season.
Yeah. When we get into training camp and all that, we can ask about that.
Yeah, I was just curious because you never know with a budding franchise player like that who looked so good in their short stint here. It's yeah. All right. We talked about him. You talked about talking with him. Ron Francis, Coach Hackstall. I mean, why don't you give us the lowdown? Any big announcements from them, and then we can kind of transition from there into talking about the team's performance as a whole this season.
Yeah, so after the player media availabilities, we got Ron Francis and Dave Hackstall together, which was interesting. Just kind of a different feel, the two of them sitting side by side, as you're talking to them together.
Yeah, going to take that to mean Hackstall is here for next year.
Yes, Hackstall will be here for next year.
Sorry, Hunter.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm not surprised. We did get basically our answer as far as the coaching staff and what changes would be made today. And before they started with any questions, they did announce that the goalie coach, Andrew Allen, would not be returning. They would not be renewing his contract for next year. So that's kind of the coaching change that we're going to get. Now, I think it makes sense given where the goaltending was at this season. Obviously not the results that anybody wanted. How much of that is on just randomness versus goalie coaching versus the goalies themselves, hard to say, but I think they kind of identified that as an area that, was simply not good enough. And so, there's going to be a new goalie coach next season.
I know. And that's something we talked about a lot at the beginning of the year when the goaltending was unbelievably bad. Like, it was otherworldly bad, but totally flipped the script, and massive strides were made by really everybody involved in the process over the second half of the season, to the point where the Kraken were able to get up there and kind of be slightly above average in terms of goaltending league-wide. And so it is a little surprising to me that was the one decision they made, was arguably the one aspect of the game that you could see them make adjustments and show marked improvement in.
Right.
But obviously not enough, I guess.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of improvement toward the end of the season. It's difficult, right? It's clearly not good enough. And it's something that I think more than any other issue with this team needs to be fixed next season if they're going to be competitive. I think they feel the pressure there.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to tell behind the scenes, especially with the assistant coaches too, because we don't get to talk to them like we get to talk to Dave. And I did ask Chris Drieger actually about that today before the announcement, of course, with Andrew Allen. I said, what can you kind of tell us about, Andrew as a goalie coach, because we don't get a whole lot of insight into that. And it was a pretty standard answer. He's done a good job. He made good progress and all this kind of stuff. He mentioned that it was kind of rough at the start of the season, and that there is this kind of, communication curve that you need to have whenever you get a new goalie coach, really. But, he had fairly good things to say about Andrew. And Allen also, he was on the ice working with Philip Grubauer today. And you'd have to imagine he probably knew that he was not going to be brought back. So, class moved to stay there and help Crew get ready for the World Championships.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, we've had lots of talk about all of the coaching staff at Hackstall all the way down. I think when we start digging into some things, might have pointed to maybe making more than just this one move, but for now we at least have our answer. We've been speculating about it for a long time. Everybody's been talking about it, and we now know what's up, and so that's half the battle right there.
For sure, it allows us to really clarify things going forward into next season. I think in the back of our minds there was this little, well, who's gone? What if they're
Hmm.
there? But now we know you can have that stability going forward.
Yep. All right. So what else did they talk about? What was kind of the feel from, you know, the guys truly representing the organization, representing the front office and everything about things.
I think they kind of echoed the optimism for the future that the players talked about.
Hmm.
There was definitely this air that things were going to get better, and they were committed to making sure things get better. One of the things that was talked about, both with the coaches and a lot of the players too, was just how important it's going to be to get a full off season together and have it feel normal again. And I did get into kind of expectations a little bit too. I asked Ron Francis point blank, what would in your mind be a successful season next year? And he said making the playoffs. That's success, is making the playoffs. For what we're looking at next year, that's kind of what the goal is. So I think it's good to kind of get that expectation set. You see where his mind is at.
Hmm.
This is not. He was asked kind of, is this also like a 1 year build, 2 year build, three, that kind of thing? Do you have a timeline on it? And he just kind of kept going back to we want to make the playoffs. That's what you want to do. So I think that's kind of what the goal is for next year and kind of where we can all set our targets at. So that was interesting to me. As far as roster stuff, how do you get there? What do you need to add? I think Ron Francis was actually pretty transparent as far as what he saw the team's needs being. I was very pleased with that. I didn't think we
Yeah.
were going to get a whole lot on that front, but he talked about first of all scoring,
Hmm.
needing to add it forward. He said you want to get someone who can play in the top six, and then and he said I think maybe another one who can play in the top nine. So
Hmm.
that tells you what they're looking at for forward. We kind of knew that already,
Yeah.
but you're looking for a scoring top six forward, and then you're also maybe looking for a guy in the top nine as well to complement the depth forwards. I think that's kind of both, what we both had thought.
Hmm.
Um, and then on defense, he was asked too if you'd also maybe look for a puck moving defenseman to kind of help with those scoring issues. And he said both for sure, the forwards, the forward and the defenseman. That's something they would be interested in. So I think those are going to be the areas that they're going to target. Top six forward, top nine forward, and puck moving defenseman. Now that's kind of what we had assumed,
Yeah.
but to hear Ron Francis basically confirm that, you can kind of see what his targets are going to be in the offseason.
Yeah, I was going to say several times throughout this whole process, even going back to last summer, Ron Francis has really surprised me with how open he's been and just kind of laid it bare and said, hey, look, these are the realities. You guys can all see it. I'm not going to play dumb with you,
Mm-hmm.
about what we have going on. And I really appreciate that because I hate when general managers play dumb, essentially, right?
Yes.
Like there are general managers around this league that would talk about this and just be like, well, we're gonna take a look at it and whatever, and they wouldn't just be like, no, we need goal scoring and we'd like to add some wingers in our top six, and because that would be giving away too much top secret information, even though the entire world can see, hey, that's the problem.
Exactly, and I'm so grateful that he's doing that because most GMs wouldn't. And I think very early on, like when you talk around the expansion draft and stuff, Francis didn't really either. Of course, he's
Hmm.
got so much on his plate with the expansion draft. There's
Yeah.
just so much. I do get it. But yeah, I mean, props to Francis. I know I've given him a hard time like around the
Hmm.
expansion draft about not really saying anything, but he has been so much better basically since like March 1st when he kind of met with us.
Yeah.
I was surprised at how much that he let on about what he was going to do, and yeah, just been pleased with that ever since. The other big off-season, you call it conundrum, call it dilemma, whatever that they've got, the goaltending issue.
Yep.
Right, we know Joey Decord is going to require waivers to be sent down. It might force a decision between Drieger and Decord. This is something we've talked about, although it didn't seem like Francis was really all that worried about it or thinking about it. He said, yes, we do. Joey is going to require
Hmm.
waivers. You do run the risk of losing him there if you want to send him down. But, that's something that we'll look at, in training camp, and if we need to make that decision or make a call and, potentially risk losing him, that's just something we got to deal with. But the fact that he mentioned training camp,
Yeah.
I mean, that tells me that he doesn't feel that he's going to be forced to make a decision on one of them this offseason. or at least that he's, the other explanation I could see is that you don't want to communicate that you need to
Yeah.
make a decision necessarily. So it might just be that, not wanting to let GMs know you're in a tough position there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably, if you're going to go target Chris Drieger and he's like, yeah, we got to make this choice. It's going to be tough. It's going to lower the asking price. So that might be it as well.
Yeah. Although, again, other general managers can recognize your reality. They see it. They know. Like, it's like, But that's where, based on how open he's been, I'm going to go ahead and give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think it was that. I think there is a part of him that, is like, hey, this is a tough choice, and let's be real. We keep saying they should keep Decord because he's younger, cheaper, all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, his games were not great with the Kraken this year at all.
No, they weren't. And you can argue he didn't have the proper support in front of him, but still, he's got to do his job. And on that small sample size, I kind of understand, thinking, can we really afford to make sure he's our backup and he's getting, 20 to 30 games next season for sure. I understand, the hesitation there. So we'll see where that goes, but Francis doesn't seem all that worried.
Yeah. A team that could be interested in him, just given how much they've seen of him.
Shoot, go ahead.
Florida.
Okay. Drieger you're talking about.
No, Decord. Playing with Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
They got a good read on him too.
AHL.
Not that they really need to add another goalie.
I was going to say, yeah, you've got Bobrovsky and Knight, but...
No, but you know who else saw him a couple times this year? A couple Kraken games?
What, did he play against the Oilers?
The Oilers. I think he played twice against the Oilers at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that might be a smart pickup for them.
Yeah.
If you can get it at a good price, they need to bring in a goalie, as we saw.
I was going to say, they're the top trading partner for either goalie probably anyway, just because they so desperately need one. And I know it hurts to trade a goaltender in division like that. You don't want to be helping out a divisional opponent, especially a team that wasn't exactly rock solid at getting to the playoffs this year. So, you're probably really going to be competitive with them next year. But at the same time, they're the ones you can really kind of, get the most out of.
You can squeeze them for that better return. Yeah,
exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how Ron Francis plays it all over the course of the season, but have a lot more faith after that trade deadline. He handled that very, very well when it came to all these kinds of things. So I'm feeling okay about it.
Yep. And of course, mention again the draft picks, all the draft picks he acquired as potential ammunition to go do things. That's definitely something they're going to watch out for.
Yeah. Did you ask about Patrick Laine? Is he on the
No, I did not ask about Patrick Laine specifically.
You didn't tempt them into a tampering conundrum and controversy, RJ?
Yeah, exactly. And Ron, I think it was a couple other people's questions like, I can't mention anyone in particular because that's tampering. But he did say also, he likes the free agent class. He does feel that there's a few guys that hopefully they get to the start of free agency that could help the team.
Yeah, I think we got a good idea about that. All right, so, Ron Francis talked about it there somewhat. It's obvious what this team's biggest problem was this season, and I'm just going to throw out some stuff that highlights how bad their goal scoring was. Well, goals per game, Kraken finished 5th worst in the NHL. It came to power play percentage, they were 4th worst in the NHL, rocking that sweet 14.22% on the power play. That'll really do it for you. Team shooting percentage, 6th worst in the NHL. So that was maybe not quite as bad, but again, your 8.9% is not good at all. Anytime you're down in single digits like that. I guess a lot of teams are, but still, it's not great. You want to be at least over 9, and they were not. Surprisingly, though, you look at the teams behind them. Got Boston, got Los Angeles there, a couple playoff teams. So.
Interesting. I would not think that.
Very, very interesting. That being said, they took significantly more shots than all these other teams down there, so they made up for it in volume.
Okay, so they're volume shooters, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about over 500 more shots for both of them than the Seattle Kraken took this year as a team. So basically an Ovechkin's worth of shots. But yeah, it's goal scoring was not there this year. We knew it was going to be a struggle just looking at the roster entering the season. We knew certainly post expansion draft that was going to be an issue. Free agency, we had questions about, is Jayden Schwartz really going to help out your goal scoring issue? Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
It was bad. There was plenty of nights where you felt like if the Kraken had two, it was going, they better only allow one, because I don't know that they can buy a third goal. And that's kind of what the numbers play out, is their goals per game finished at 2.66, which is very, very low in a year where league scoring was up, or at least seemingly it was. Yeah, but it was way up. And that you're talking about, the Florida team finish over 4. Maple Leafs finish 3.85. Like, they're almost, getting close to doubling up on you. Certainly a goal and a half more a game than what you can muster. And then I know the goaltending was bad, but we saw the goaltending improved greatly in the second half of the year, and they had a lot of the same results just because they could not score.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely something that everyone knows is an area of need. I mean, it's
yeah,
obvious.
I know. Super obvious. But the thing that I think could best help that would be improving the power play. And so we had lots of questions. Paul McFarland in charge of that power play. He is coming back. Mm-hmm. I really, really hope he takes this offseason to really take a look at it and try to figure out what went wrong and what can be improved on it. I know I joke about, you got to stay away from the 1-3-1. I understand that there is nothing really else that you can run these days in the NHL. But for crying out loud, if you're going to have that one person, the first one, please just be in front of the goaltender. Don't be to the side of the net. What is this?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we've talked so much about the power play and the issues. Hopefully that's one of the things they really just go back to the drawing board and try and figure out. I know it's the coaching staff. They're going to go through. They're going to look at video. They're going to try and make adjustments. Hopefully it's just a matter of that, during the season, they just kind of felt rushed and didn't want to, make some of these wholesale changes, in the flow of things. I don't know that that's really the case. I'm not really confident that it is, but hopefully.
I was going to say, I mean, after they basically went all year without doing that, do you have a lot of faith in them doing that in the off season?
No.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's something that's, a lot of fans have been concerned about for a while now, and I think that that's going to be something that's going to continue to concern them over the course of the offseason, because the bottom line is, I understand that during the course of a season it's a busy time, and it's hard to be like, hey, we got to tear this thing down to the studs and try to rebuild it from the ground up. That being said, you had multiple opportunities over the course of the season. You had losing streaks that were massive that you could have done that during. You had multiple breaks where the league just shut down because of COVID or whatever other reason where you could have done that. And you knew at those points that it wasn't working, and they didn't necessarily take those opportunities to turn things around or make significant changes, or focus on, that one brief moment in time where you had Marcus Johansson playing well, or at the time Marcus Johansson playing well on the power play, and your power play was starting to look successful, and it was operating at a good, close to 25% or whatever it was for that short stretch of time, and not build off of that and try to incorporate that. Certainly once you trade him, figure out somebody who can fill that role and essentially do what he was doing. So those are the things that worry me, is that, okay, yes, you have this full off season. You're finally going to have a real off season where generally what your team is, you understand what your coaching staff is. These are the times where you have to make those changes, but I just feel like, given how little we saw them attempt to make changes during the season, I'm questioning if we're going to see the wholesale changes that need to happen now.
Exactly, and I don't have a ton of confidence in that. I think, certain things, systems wise they'll look at, but the power play, I think I have the least confidence in all of them.
Me too, and it's a shame, because and maybe once they know who they bring in free agency, that'll change things, because there would be a difference in how you're going to deploy Philip Forsberg on the power play versus a Johnny Gaudreau. Right?
Exactly, and you do it totally different ways.
Yeah,
and if you do go get one of those big fish, that's probably who you're going to build your power play setup around.
Yeah,
and so that's just going to depend.
Yes. Now the other thing, we talked about the goal scoring, as you said. We all kind of already knew that. We've gone over this forever. This was the other interesting thing that I noticed when kind of looking at the Kraken compared to the rest of the league in just basic terms. I'm not digging into, analytics and all that other kind of stuff. Kraken finished second to last in PK percentage.
Yeah. I mean, as much as we've talked about the penalty kill improving over the course of the season, and it did, they kind of made this decision to be more aggressive with it. Yeah, overall, the PK numbers just not good over the course of a season. I think you had these stretches that were really bad, like so awful bad. You'd allow 3 or 4 in a game. That it really weighs those numbers down. And like a lot of things for the Kraken this season, they had moments where they were doing everything right. It just was not nearly consistent enough.
Yeah, and they did a good job of not taking penalties. You're in the bottom third as far as, most penalties taken. So that's a great start in helping deal with a bad penalty kill, is if, just don't take penalties and then it can't hurt you kind of thing. But the bottom line is to be 74.55% on the penalty kill is bad. It's really, really bad. I mean, it's not as bad as Vancouver that was basically in the 60% most of the year until basically that one game against the Kraken helped them out a lot when the Kraken went 1 for 8 on the power play. But it's really bad, and I do think that that's something that needs to kind of be talked about, because I do hope that they pay attention and kind of fix that one up. We said it all year. What makes this team a playoff team? Arguably, it was just average goaltending and average special teams. And I still stand by that. I think if the special teams, I think the goaltending became average, and the thing then that was holding them back was the special teams at that point. And so I would like to see that improved a lot this offseason as well.
Agreed. Although, and I think they have the building blocks on the PK to get it done. And we've seen the times where they've looked good. They have this kind of power kill setup that if you get the right talent on it, get it going the right way. We saw it with Toronto last night in game 1 against Tampa. It can just be lethal against anyone.
That's where almost I like this idea of bringing in another puck moving defenseman, and I want them to kind of be a more veteran person, because then I think that's what was really helping the power kill this year. Some of those stretch outlet passes that guys could make and hit a Yanni Gord breaking in, or whoever it was, Riley Shahan. He didn't necessarily convert a lot of his attempts, but he had lots of good attempts. And that's where bringing in a veteran who can play on the penalty kill, but also has that tool in their toolbox to be able to whip out a 70-foot pass if needed. I think that could be really fun.
And I think that's one area where the Kraken missed Mark Giordano once he was traded.
Yes.
Certainly on the PK, he was doing a really good job right before that trade. He kind of figured things out. And that's, a veteran defenseman who's, probably a second or third pairing guy now. That's the kind of person you could bring in. Now that we brought up, though, I want to mention something about the puck moving defenseman.
Yeah.
That I thought was really interesting.
Adam Larson should do it more, because he's capable of it, but he doesn't ever do it.
Those were not Francis's exact words, but no, they didn't really mention Larson in that capacity. But they were asked about, is puck moving defenseman a need? And Francis said, yes, we definitely would like to get one of those. We need a guy who can move the puck, who can help generate offense. Now whether that's someone that we bring in the off season, or whether that's Riker Evans who can step right into that role. And he did mention Riker Evans right there. And he also at a different point mentioned that Riker Evans said he'll have every opportunity to make the team out of training camp. Yeah. So it's someone they're clearly high on. And, if the market doesn't work out for a puck moving defenseman, Riker Evans could just be the guy to slot in there.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was thinking all along, was like, oh yeah, they want a puck moving defenseman. I'm like, you have one already. Like, he's right there. Yeah, I don't know that my whole penalty kill, this is what you need thing works with Riker Evans. I don't know that we want to throw him to the Wolves and be like, all right, your job is to make this penalty kill better and increase shorthanded goal attempts. But no, I mean, he's there. I've been saying it all along. He's going to be on this roster to start next season. I really don't see a way around that. He has had such a fantastic season. He's of the right age and the right point in his development where they're going to give him a significant shot in training camp. And I just think, based on everything I've seen from him, he will earn a roster spot with the Seattle Kraken next year. And I think that, yeah, they're already kind of getting that feel internally too. Just having him around, certainly now that he's signed, he's in Charlotte and everything. That was probably like that last kind of step that they were waiting for, and he's probably already helped make that decision for them.
Yep, the path is certainly there for him.
Yeah. All right. What else do you want to talk about, RJ, when it comes to the Kraken? What worked this season? What didn't work?
I mean, let's see. I think
I just so much of it just boils down to they couldn't score.
right. A lot of it does. And I one thing I guess I just want to say is that it gave me confidence hearing Ron Francis kind of diagnose what the team's problems were,
Mm-hmm.
at least as far as roster composition. I think he's right on the money as far as team needs, which
Yeah.
isn't the case for all GMs.
Nope.
So and certainly since the trade deadline, I've just gotten a lot more confident in Ron Francis and kind of what the plan is. And I'm just ready to go for this offseason because I think he knows what needs to be fixed and he's capable of doing it. He's got the ammo now and he's smart. So I feel good about that. Yeah, goal scoring, just that was a huge issue.
I know.
The defensive lapses, were another one. Those turnovers, through your own zone, that sort of thing. Hopefully, that's the one where I'm hoping having a whole off season and just kind of getting to train together and all that stuff makes it better because we've seen at times they're capable of just getting rid of these. They're capable of even early in the season playing long stretches where they barely allow a shot on goal. We saw basically that clinic in the Colorado game where they beat the Avs at the end of the season. Like, if you play like that, just get that over, most of your 82 games and you should be fine. And they've shown they're capable of doing it even with the defenseman that they have now. And that's kind of without adding whoever they're going to add. So hopefully that one can get fixed. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's a consistency thing.
It is a consistency thing. And it's so weird when that was the one strength. The two things going into the season we knew was that we had one of the best, if not the best, goaltending tandem in the NHL, and we had this defensive core that, yes, it may be outside of Gio lacks a superstar, but it was going to be rock solid night in, night out, and it was going to be physical, and it was, going to create a lot of problems for other teams that might try to, operate in the slot or drive the net. And then the season comes along and neither goaltender can make a stop really to save their lives at times. And the defense just, despite having all these giants, like literal giants back there, just refuse to hit anybody, muscle anybody, body up anybody, use their sticks. That's still the thing that bothers me is like all these guys have massive reaches. If you're not going to play super physical, at least use your reach to disrupt what they're trying to do. Use your stick to get in a passing lane, poke check the puck. I've never seen a team so shy about poke checking.
Yeah, it's something they definitely are not taking advantage of. When you've got that kind of reach, you got to, use that stick, use that reach, like you were saying. And hopefully that's something the coaching staff kind of zeroes in on, when they watch the tape, or I don't know, maybe bringing in whoever else they bring in allows guys to more slot into roles they're comfortable with. I think you had a lot of guys who maybe weren't the most comfortable with playing an offensive role, kind of forced into that, and especially at the end of the season, losing Gio. And I think they, a lot of guys did a really good job in that. Carson Soucy first and foremost,
for sure.
But if you take some of that workload off of him there, maybe they can focus a little bit more on defense.
Exactly. It does feel like, in a lot of the sense, as we were talking about earlier with the power play and stuff, it does feel like a lot of stuff was set it and forget it for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like they set things up and then they were just like, okay, this is how we're going to play. And they just didn't really come back to it over the course of the year. And it'll be interesting to see, I don't think you can continue to do that. I think maybe you could have that be the idea for your first season and you're just trying to figure it out and you didn't have, a proper training camp and nobody knew anybody. And certainly things like lines and defensive pairings was not consistent at all throughout the course of the year. That's, again, something that you can maybe get away with this year, but I don't think you can continue to get away with. That's something else I want to bring up is just, you kind of have to have lines, and people get used to playing with each other if you want to have any sort of sustained success or consistency, right? That was part of it on defense, was if you're playing with a new person every other night, it's hard to feel confident that, hey, I can step up and go for this poke check and know that the guy behind me's got it, or I can try to make this play behind my own net and know that the other guy can cover the slot for the guy that's going to try to streak down and fill up the space I just left. We saw that happen a lot this year, where that communication was not there, that chemistry was not there between defensive partners. And I hope that a full off season together and full training camp together will kind of set up what those pairings are going to be. They can establish what those roles are, really communicate with each other, because for whatever reason in sports, training camp is the only time that guys will talk about that stuff with each other. I don't know why that is, and that's an all sports issue. But I hope that's something that can happen, and that improves. And then when things aren't working, that yes, the coaching staff gets a little more hands-on than it seems like they were this year, as far as addressing those issues before it's too late. Because I really think that, early on in this year, they were just like, well, everybody's stressed, everybody's trying to figure it out, let's just give it time. But before they knew it, they were essentially out of a playoff spot by Thanksgiving, and then it was just, oh, you know what I mean? I think that's probably what happened. And, and that don't want that again.
No. And that consistency in the pairings and the lines too, that's something that players brought up as well. Jordan Eberle talked about it and how nice it was to have this consistent line of, him and Maddie and Ryan Donato, for the end of the season. And he said that's one of the things that separates, the good teams from the bad teams. You think about the best teams in the league, Tampa, Boston, there's another one he mentioned, but you look at some of these famous lines, you instantly think like the perfection line, things, they've been together for years, sometimes a decade. And that can really help separate you, and be a great team. And it's just not something the Kraken really had this season, but hopefully that they can have next season.
Yeah. And I think that they will. I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. Matty Beniers fixed that issue. Like yes. The moment he walked in that door, the lines were set, and we were able to see the lines kind of take on their own identities and their own styles of play, and saw a lot of things improve 5-on-5 for the Kraken as a whole. I even think it helped out the defense later on too. Things got then complicated when Vince Dunn left. That threw a whole wrench defensively. Again, injuries happen. We'll just have to see with all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that's really it as far as kind of that macro, large scale view of what worked, what didn't. We've been talking about it all year, though.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we could rehash this, forever, but yeah, good to kind of get that wrap up from the players and really get a sense of where the organization's at. And certainly after hearing from Ron Francis, each of the last few times I've heard from him, I've just felt more and more confident and excited for the off season.
Yeah, just to know that, yes, you have a big problem, like in your goal scoring problem, but it's at least identified, and that the organization is considering it its top priority. Yeah, like that's all you can hope for as a fan base.
Yes. And that, everyone all the way up to ownership is willing to then spend the money, do whatever it takes to address that and go after that top priority. So, that's all you can ask.
Yeah, because there are definitely teams around the NHL where their problem may not be as obvious, or it's we got problems all over the place. Where do we even start? Or it's our problem is super obvious, but I have zero confidence in our ownership or our front office to do anything about it. And, we can all just be thankful that we are not in that situation with the Seattle Kraken. That is a very important thing. And, definitely something to be thankful about and have optimism for the offseason.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for being patient those extra couple days. Let RJ get in there for all the exit interviews and everything. I think it was worth it. We're going to let RJ now go and sleep for at least 48 hours. It's probably what he needs, looking at him. We'll see you all next week for kind of part 2 of our season wrap-up, where we'll go and break things down player by player and all that stuff. And then at some point soon here, we are going to be talking, going back and revisiting the expansion draft and either doing a redraft or at least talking about, you know, kind of reviewing it and seeing after the season, you know, which picks do we still like, which situations do we still wish might have happened, you know, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Hindsight, you know, we're going to do the 2020 thing.
Exactly.
Is that how people talk about it? I don't know. It should be. There's a good line in there somewhere. You know, leave it in the comment section on YouTube for this. Let me know what it is. All right. So thanks everybody. We'll see you all next time.